Welcome to this webinar about how to make the most of the application process for the John Schofield Trust mentoring programme. If you wouldn't mind muting, that would be brilliant. I'm David. I'm the Chief Executive of the Trust. I'm very grateful to you for joining us today, whether you're joining us live for this webinar or whether you're catching up on YouTube. We've run a webinar like this every year for the last few years to help guide you through the application process to become a fellow of the John Schofield Trust. By the end of this webinar, you should have a much clearer idea about how to make the most of our application form and the other elements that need to be part of your application to give you the best possible chance of working with us to get mentored in 2025. And I'm joined on the call from our side by my colleague Howard, who is the Fellowship Manager of the Trust, by Kate Fitzsimmons, who is going to be managing the selection and matching process, which all candidates go through, and by two of our recent fellows, Aisha Rahman and Nick McAlpin. So before I turn to Aisha and Nick to ask a little bit about their experience of working with the Trust, I want to tell you a little bit about the background of the John Schofield Trust and about what we do now. The Trust was formed in 1996 by the family and friends of the BBC and Channel 4 journalist John Schofield, who was killed while covering the war, the civil war in Yugoslavia. And at a time when there are foreign wars raging, in Ukraine and in Gaza, and journalists are daily putting their lives on the line to report from the front line. It's a time in which we often reflect on the risks which journalists put themselves to make sure that information gets out. And after John Schofield's death, his widow Susie Schofield received lots of letters from colleagues, friends, bosses saying what an extraordinary journalist her husband was, and I think she felt that he could have done with hearing more of that when he was a young journalist starting out. And so she created this organisation as a charity to support young journalists with training, with encouragement, with masterclasses and with support. And in the last 25 years or so, more than that, 27 years now, the Trust has grown to become the biggest mentoring, social mobility and diversity charity working in journalism. And we now mentor more than 200 journalists each year, and applications are open to print journalists, digital, multimedia and broadcast journalists working anywhere and everywhere in the United Kingdom and in Ireland. And so we mentor people from the Channel Islands to the Shetland Islands and from Grantham to Galway. And we mentor people who work for around 300 different media organisations, from the BBC and Sky to new digital startups to local papers. So in other words, if you are working in journalism, you are not disbarred from applying to us, regardless of who you're working for, where you're working, which sector of journalism you're working in. We offer the mentoring scheme to everyone. If you're in Wales, you can apply in Welsh using our Welsh language application form. We haven't yet managed to get Gaelic, the other languages of the UK, but Welsh is available. And we encourage you in the process to reflect on what your own career goals are and to tell us about them, so that we can make the best possible match and find the best possible journalist to support your career journey. So that's a little bit the Trust and what we do. Our mission, as I say, is diversity. Journalism is not a terribly diverse profession. The Trust works really hard to broaden the pipeline of talent coming into newsrooms. And so we say that we look kindly on applications from candidates who come from underrepresented communities. And if you have a look at the Trust website, you'll see a slide which indicates how we are doing against the baseline of the profession in terms of social mobility, people who've had free school meals, first generation to go through university. We mentor a lot of journalists with disabilities. We have a large group, of LGBTQ plus community journalists, and we try in every respect to run an organisation which is supports diversity, supports social mobility. So Aisha and Nick, you have been fellows for us recently. We were talking about this, Aisha, 22, is that right? 2022?
Hi, yeah, I started mine in 2022 when I ended in autumn of 2023, so about 5 months ago or so.
Okay. And Nick, remind us, last year, is that right?
Yeah, last year I was doing it, and so I finished, I guess, December or whenever it was last year. I can't remember now, the months
So
go
we
so
tend to
fast.
run at the calendar year, so you'd have started in January.
Yeah, exactly.
So can you cast your mind back, Aisha? Why did you apply? How did you come across this mentoring scheme, and tell me about your process that brought you to apply?
So I'll introduce myself. So my name is Aisha and I'm an output producer at Sky News. So when I first started at Sky, there was an email that got sent round about the John Schofield Trust, and it looked really interesting. And I didn't apply the first time I saw or heard about it, but I saw loads of stuff on social media about the scheme and it seemed really interesting. I saw loads of like journalists that I'm familiar with applying for the scheme, and it just looked like something really exciting to be part of. It seemed like a place where I can have like a network of support that's not necessarily just from my workplace. So the reasons as to why I applied is because I didn't really know that many people in the news industry when I first started out. And I just wanted to kind of like build my network, have someone to ask questions to that wasn't just in the workplace, because sometimes that can feel like a little bit of pressure. So someone that's got that breadth of experience that I can just talk to, share ideas with, and essentially just help me grow my journalism journey. Especially when you're like first starting out in journalism, it can be quite like intense. You might have like imposter syndrome. So those questions that when it's such a busy newsroom, we don't always have time to ask those nitty-gritty questions. It's nice to have someone that you can pull aside and just talk to about anything that's on your mind. So that's essentially the reason why I initially applied. And I guess overall, it was just nice to have someone there to support me. So for example, when I first started at Sky, I was on a fixed term contract. And then eventually a staff role came up, which I had to interview for. So I was able to have my mentor guide me through that process, speak to me about what's expected. I got to practice having interviews with her, and it's really helpful. I realized I haven't said who my mentor was. So it was the deputy editor at Good Morning Britain, Aruj Jaffoet. So yeah, it was really nice to have someone to speak to about things like that. And then in terms of like our interactions, so we did a variety from face-to-face, phone calls, you can even do it on Teams depending on where your mentor is based. So it's basically do whatever works for you. I'd say with this scheme, it's definitely you get out of it what you put in. Make from your first meeting, make it what you want to make it. So I say especially before you apply, think about the things that you want to get out of the scheme, why you want to apply, and the specific benefits for you. And I think when it comes to your application process, you'll be able to put that to pen to paper or video, however you want to do that. So I think that's what I did. I thought about like what I want in the next year, what I want to achieve, and essentially I kind of put that into my application, and I kind of specifically explained what I'm hoping to achieve. So for example, where I want to be the next 5 years in my journalism career and how I want to get there. And I think it's a part of the process where you can be quite specific about what sort of mentor you're kind of looking for, whether it's like someone that's working in a particular field, because I think I was quite specific about what I wanted, and I actually did get matched with someone that so for me, I kind of wanted someone from like a diverse background so they could understand some of the struggles that I might face. Someone that's had like broadcasting experience, and I did get that, which was really helpful, so I could use them to kind of guide me, because they've essentially been there, they've done it, they've got a breadth of experience. What else? Yeah, so I'd say also when it comes to what you've achieved, be very specific with your examples. So use the STAR method situation, what you did, what you got out of it, how you would specifically benefit from the scheme, and essentially what you could give as well. So I would say those are my kind of top tips. Be specific with your application, speak about what exactly you want, and also just be genuine, which I'm sure all you guys will be. And I think that's very clear when you're like applying to something, like your passion comes through. So yeah, just be specific about what you want, and hopefully it'll all work out.
Thank you, Aisha. Sorry for disappearing there, and thanks for everyone who picked up the pieces. Nick, I hope you may have been asked this when I wasn't here, but do you want to speak a little bit about your journey to applying for the trust?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Aisha's remarks were very comprehensive there, so I'll be a bit probably shorter. It's mostly been said, but so my name's Nick McAlpin. I'm a journalist at The New Arab, which is a Middle East news website in the English edition of Al Arabi Al Jadid. The way I found out about the John Schofield Trust was a friend of mine who I believe had found out about it through work and then had just told me there's this organization, they do mentoring. I think you'd be a good fit, have a go for it. And I applied, I think, as I said earlier, before everyone joined the Zoom, I applied, I think, on the final day, because I'd only found out about it pretty close to the deadline. And yeah, it was a great decision. I was matched with, first of all, with someone, senior producer called Ruhi Hassan at ITV News. And then about halfway through, she had some personal things to deal with. So I got moved to someone else who also works at ITN and is also associate editor at New Lines magazine, Tam Hussein. And both cases, they were great. It was a really good experience. Just, I think one of the main reasons why I applied is because working at the New Arab, working at kind of specialist or smaller media organizations, often there's not what Aisha might have had, for example, at Sky or people at BBC. You will have maybe more opportunities to develop or to have mentoring within the workplace. But when you have such a small organization, it might be non-existent. So therefore, a scheme like the John Schofield Trust can really give you something that you might be lacking and give you that leg up. And that's what I found. And I'm still in touch with Tam, especially to this day. We have a chat every couple of months or every month, and just kind of talk a bit and see where we can benefit each other. And that's the other great thing. It's not always a one-way direction. The other nice thing is you get to know your mentor over the time. I think you become friends with them. You can help them as well sometimes, or give them a bit of information, just have a chat. So that's great as well.
I'm not going to let you off the hook so easily about applying on the last day. Do you remember what time your application would have reached us?
Probably about 3 p.m. or something. I think it wasn't too late,
Yeah,
but it was
that was
certainly
quite early, because I was saying before we came on the call how Howard and I often sit and watch as the applications come in, and last year the last one came in at 5 seconds to go before midnight. So I mean, journalists all love a deadline, but I think it's probably worth saying, and Howard will say more about this when we get to it, that you probably do want to spend a little time with the application form. Let's put it no more strongly than that. It's not something you can dash off in half an hour. You do want to put some thought into it, but I do appreciate that not everybody hears about it on launch day. You talked a wee bit there, Nick, about the two mentors, because you know, as you say, we changed your mentor halfway through. Talk a little bit about what you think you got out of your mentors. I mean, was it specific advice about, you know, this piece, I would do it this way, or was it more general career advice, or how did it pan out?
There was a mixture of both, depending on the session. I think the sessions were quite themed based on what I needed at that time. A lot of it was based around kind of, as I say, being at a small news outlet, sometimes some of the opportunities to ask questions or some of the opportunities to have, you know, we have editors who are very experienced and know what they're doing, but they might not have the time to sit down with you one-on-one, give you feedback, give you advice on how to approach something, just because they're managing, you know, the whole team on their own. So I think what was really, really good is being able to sit with Ruhi and with Tam and just ask those questions about how would you approach this, how would you deal with this, the technical aspects of journalism. A lot of it was, as well as on certain sessions, career advice, how to progress, how to kind of get more out of the job you're currently in. That was a big theme from Ruhi, especially. I remember she was always talking about, you know, you may want to progress, but what's really important is also that you get the most out of and contribute the most to the role that you're in at the time. And I think that's something I've remembered and held going forward for sure.
Thank you. We should maybe say a little bit as well about, as well as the one-to-one mentoring relationship, you also get access, if you are being mentored by the trust, to 12 masterclasses in the course of the year, which are sort of panels in which journalists working for different media organizations talk about a variety of things, talk about roles, how to be a foreign correspondent, but also might talk about other issues in journalism, AI, FOI requests, how to do investigations, how to ask for a pay rise. We have a day of masterclasses in June, in which one of the fun things we do is we have a kind of career agony aunt session, and it can be everything from, I've got a new boss and they think I'm an idiot, or I think they think I'm an idiot, to is it time for me to move on? Should I go freelance? Those kind of things. So, those opportunities are also there, and there's a chance to actually meet the other people who are mentoring. And I think being part of a cohort and being able to share experiences is a really useful part of this too. And we have very active WhatsApp groups in which people will say, hey, I've been asked to do a shift and they're offering me this, is that enough? And people can kind of share insights. Do any of the don't want to fish if the answer is no, all this is in the past, I can't remember, but Aisha, do any of the masterclasses stand out in your memory? Were any particularly useful for you?
I remember the one at the BBC where we had like a few sessions throughout the day, and I think it ended with the agony aunt.
Yeah.
That was nice.
And it was Mariana Spring at the very end as well.
Yeah, that was. And there was one a couple of months ago where they practiced doing an interview, and there was someone from the BBC then, I can't remember.
Was that another in-person one?
That was the
fun one. Yes, that was the idea there was that we were joined by a real life CEO.
Yeah, it was that one.
He did terrible.
That was amazing.
Part, and he was about to be grilled by a interviewer in those scenarios that you often see on the telly, and so we saw them being briefed separately, and then that was quite a fun one. And I think we'll try and do that again. Actually, I think that was
that was awesome. That was really good.
Like that. Good, excellent. Okay, so Howard, you've just worried me by vanishing. Are you still there, or have you stepped out? You're back.
I am. I just forgot to get a paper and a pen. So
okay, I'm ahead of schedule, actually. Are there any questions from the audience at this stage? I see someone's popped one.
Yeah, so just welcoming some more, because we've only have one at the moment, and the current one is about really eligibility, I think. So someone was worried because they've been in freelance roles and they were worried that they might not be eligible, but I think we can reassure them they're coming.
I have quite a bit to say about eligibility because it's a question that comes up a lot. I mean, just the headline is we're looking for 2 to 5 years, and we realise that people do often come into the profession through freelancing, and so we look, understandably on that. The other thing about the trust scheme is it does come around every year, and we do have people who apply to us more than once. So if you are looking at this and thinking, wow, that looks really great, but you're thinking, do I have enough experience? Then there will be an opportunity next year and the year after. So, and that's not to say don't put in an application, but bear in mind that as your career goes on and you get more air miles, as it were, you get more experience, your application is just going to get stronger, isn't it? Because you'll be able to evidence more things that you have done. So in other words, we do understand that people often come into the profession doing a bit of freelancing here and there, but we are looking for a certain body of experience before we'll take you on, because you have to evidence what you've done and you have to evidence the kind of stories that you've worked on. But Howard, as I say, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that in his presentation. Any more questions at this stage for Aisha and Nick?
No other questions have come through yet. No.
Okay. Just then, I'm going to ask you just a final one, I think, and it's quite a general one, which is, what difference do you think it has made to your career trajectory being mentored for a year by the trust, Nick?
Yeah, I think the main thing actually is probably confidence. I would say that's really the big thing. Definitely learn tangible skills and information and all this, that, and the other. But the main overarching thing was it gave me a lot of confidence to try things, to go for things, to even just to pursue stories. I think sometimes, especially if you like actually, I didn't know anyone in journalism when I joined the profession. Had quite a nervous disposition in general, so it could be quite nerve-wracking being in this industry. It's quite brutal at times, but just having that mentoring and a bit of encouragement gets you out of your shell a bit. You feel a bit more confident saying, you know what, I'm belong in this profession. I'm here to do it and do your best and get on with doing the stories you care about and yeah, doing the job really.
Brilliant. Aisha?
Do you know what? I'm going to be annoying and say the same thing. It's just the confidence and just having someone there to support you no matter what direction you want to go in, whether you want to risk and apply for something else. It's just the fact that you always have someone there that you can ask questions to. Yes, I'd say the main thing is that. And then also just being part of John Schofield Trust, being able to go to those events face to face and actually meet people in the industry, which has been a really nice way to like talk to people and get to know people. Because Sky's the first journalism place I've worked at. So it's been nice to like network with people from other news organizations and meet people in like the more wider media industry. So yeah.
Brilliant. And just
Uh,
maybe worth saying as well, and I'm sorry if you said this while I was disappeared in cyberspace, but the kind of questions we hear people asking their mentors are, I've seen this job, it's come up in this organization, do you think I should go for it? Or I've got an interview, I've got an interview, how do I get through the panel? Or I pitched a story to the news editor, I really don't want to lose hold of it, but they're going to give it to another more experienced journalist, aren't they? How do I kind of keep hold of my place? So lots and lots of just stuff about the day-to-day of being a journalist and also those hurdles that you have to get over as you're trying to get formal jobs. So that's the kind of chat that people have. Really nice to see.
The answer to the last one is refuse to give the contacts at all costs, and then you will get the story.
Insider tip. Insider the kind of thing you should get a MasterCard. Listen, very grateful to you both for joining us. Thanks so much. And hope to see you both soon.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Is
good
age a
luck.
barrier, or can anyone apply? Age is not a barrier, and we have mentored people in their late 50s. But we're looking for between 2 and 5 years experience. So it is possible that we will judge people might have too much experience in journalism, which will put them beyond the 5 years, but we don't care what age you are. Howard, passing over to you for a walk through the application form.
Just going to share my screen. Bear with me. Hopefully, can you see that screen clearly? I'll zoom in for particular moments, but is that coming through?
It is.
Yeah. So for this section, I'm just going to, sorry, I'm Howard. I'm the fellowship manager at the Trust. Along with David, I oversee the program for the year, the matching process, and some of the selection as well. The purpose of this section of the meeting really is to guide you through the application form. We do ask a fair number of questions. That's not to force you to spend, a long amount of time on an application form, but we really have revised the form every year to get it down to a point where the questions that we do ask, every single one of them are useful and relevant to us then matching you to an appropriate mentor. So the application is used obviously for the shortlisting, which Kate will talk about later on, and the selection, but then it's also used to find an appropriate mentor for you, and that will become clear in the application form which questions we're asking, which relate to that. But firstly, on eligibility, we have talked a little bit about this already, but I just want to underline what the eligibility criteria is. So this is just from the website. This is just the early career journalist mentoring section of the website, which you'll all have access to. And I'm just going to cover some main points from this. So on age, as David mentioned, we've had all sorts of people from all sorts of ages, including people who have had career changes later on in life and have come to us. what we mean by early career, and this is why we say early career and not young, is that early career we define as having had 2 to 5 years of professional experience. You might have been from newsroom to newsroom on a freelance basis, but that might add up to more than 2 years, in which case you would be eligible. You just need to obviously evidence to us on the application form that what those 2 years experience is made up of. We don't accept applications from people with more than 5 years, just because we're trying to focus on this specific group, and we feel that that's the group that we can help the most in terms of the mentoring. Age, though, you are expected to be over 18, and the kind of cutoff point for that is the 6th of May. So you should have reached 18 by the 6th of May to be eligible. We are a UK and Ireland-based charity, so you'll be expected to not necessarily be born in the UK or Ireland, but to work here and to be based here for the purposes of work, because obviously the network is based in the UK and Ireland, and that's where we will find the mentors. So if you're based in a totally different country, we might struggle then to give you the good quality experience that you're asking for. So you need to be, for at least from January to December 2025, you would need to be UK based and work for a UK based media company of some kind, or on a freelance basis. One of the kind of qualifications to this criteria in terms of the 2 to 5 years experiences is if you are an apprentice or a trainee. So if you are and some of you I think on the call are, if you are part of a, I don't know, news associates trainee scheme, and as part of that you are you get some sort of training, so like an NCTJ or something like that, and you are 6 months into that training program, you would be eligible to apply for this. That's a second part of our criteria. So just to kind of underline that, 2 to 5 years if you're an early career journalist, or if you're on a trainee scheme or an apprenticeship scheme, you need to have had at least 6 months of that by January 2025, which is when the scheme will start. Hopefully that's clear, but I can always come back to that and clarify some things if people have questions afterwards. In terms of what corner of the media you should come from, we are very we don't have strict rules around this. So you can be a presenter, a news anchor, you can be a TV producer, you can be radio, podcasts, as you've seen with Nick, who we were just speaking to. You could be from print or digital media, you could be a researcher, and you'll see from our fellows page, if you have a look on the website, we've got people in all sorts of roles, right from, they work for the BBC in London to they work for Birmingham Live as a local beat reporter. We welcome applications from all sorts of roles within the media, as long as it contributes to the kind of production of journalism, if you like. Those are the main things around criteria. So the other question we've had, which I should cover here, is there's a few people doing masters or bachelors, and they will finish this year in September, and so they would be eligible if you are a student on January 2025, a full-time student on January 2025. You wouldn't be eligible, but if you've graduated by then, you would be, as long as you can then evidence the 2 years of experience that we spoke about earlier. So really the cutoff point for many of these things, other than age, is January 2025. That's when we test what the eligibility is. If you are in a situation where, which I think many of you are, and we've had a few emails over the last few weeks like this, where you're really unsure based on the principles on the website or the ones I've spoken about here, and your situation is quite niche or nuanced, just reach out to us, info@johnscofieldtrust.org.uk, and tell us what your concern is or what your question is, and we can try and answer that for you. Because obviously we don't want you to go through the effort of an application if you wouldn't be eligible. But those are the main principles. In terms of the application form then, it's quite a chunky application form, and that's why we advise that you do it as early on as possible. So, the deadline is on the 9th of June. Don't wait until the 8th of June to do that application form. Even if it means you just have a look now at some of the questions, you start a Word doc or a Google doc, and you just start to write some notes about how you might answer that. So by the time you get to filling out the application, that's a lot easier. And in terms of a sort of cheat sheet for you, I've written some of the chunkiest and the biggest questions on this section of the website. So you will be asked on the form all sorts of questions about who you are, where you're from, what your role is currently. But the question that we pay a lot of attention to is the following. So we give you 250 words, or you can submit a video, and you can ask, and we ask you why you would feel you would benefit from the John Schofield Trust mentoring scheme. So we just want your view on what you feel you would benefit from in terms of mentoring, in terms of being part of the scheme. And we're getting a sense of your kind of potential there and what value we could add to you as an early career journalist by offering you this mentoring. So that's the question. That's the first kind of big chunky question. And that's the one I would advise, even before jumping on the application, just start thinking in your head, how might I answer that? Bear in mind for that question that we also use that when we are thinking about who to match you with and who your potential mentor might be. So give us hints within that answer of the sort of guidance, sort of advice, sort of insight you're looking for. To give an example, you might currently be in a newsroom where you really struggle to pitch your ideas for stories because you're shy, or you just don't have, you worry about people rejecting you or saying that's a rubbish idea, or et cetera, et cetera. That would be something that you might put in this answer. So you might say, one thing I want to work on is I want to practice pitching my ideas with someone, so then when I take it to the newsroom, I feel more confident doing that. And that's exactly the sort of thing that a mentor would help you with. Could be something totally different. So it could be that you're currently working as a producer on morning TV, and you want to move to podcasts, long form podcasts. Obviously, us reading that, and the selection panel reading that, and the matching panel will think, okay, ideally then we would match them with someone from long form podcasting, because that's the person who's going to be able to guide them potentially down that career path that they've chosen. Equally, you might be totally unsure and you might be totally lost in your career, and that's absolutely fine. This is one of the reasons why schemes like this exist. It's fine for you to be vulnerable in your application and say, I'm just a bit lost, I'm having a bit of a disaster at work, I need someone who I can talk to outside of my workplace to just get some advice and just be honest with them and kind of get their thoughts. So the only people who will read this application form is myself and David, and then the selection panel, which is just made up of some journalists, but everything is confidential, so it won't be shared, for example, with your employer. So be as clear as possible about what you hope to get out of the scheme. That's the first question. The second question that we ask is we ask about a story or an assignment that you have worked on that you're particularly proud of. And we say for you to outline the situation, tell us what your role was in that story, how you rose to the challenge and what the result was. In the case where you are an apprentice, we ask you to give examples of 2 stories you have worked on and what you learned working on those stories. This is not to get the most impressive people or to try and catch you out and say, oh, you haven't worked on that many stories. This is just for us to, again, get a sense of who you are currently, where you want to be, and the kind of direction of travel and the potential for you. This is not when you are filling out this form, it's not a sort of job application. It's an application to a scheme which is about helping early career journalists who are a bit lost or need some advice or some help, or have heard about us and think a mentor would be useful to them. We're not trying to catch you out, so do be honest in your answers. So again, with this question, you can submit it by text and write out your answer up to 250 words. But we've also in the past had some really interesting submissions via video or audio. So if that's a medium which you think represents you better and you're able to be more articulate in, do submit a video. You can upload it to YouTube and make it a closed link, so no one else can see it apart from us. And there are other platforms available for you to share it with us. Please, just on that though, if you do decide to do a video or an audio submission, please make sure that we can open that, and that it isn't time limited. So sometimes people will send us links and it's by default set for the link to close in 2 weeks' time. We'll be looking at that link for the following months, so please just leave it open so we can view that when we need to. Make it as easy for us as possible. So those are the main 2 questions in the application form. I don't think they're too difficult. Obviously, you'll probably have things already in mind that you're thinking about for both of those. The other chunky part of the application is reference. So we ask that everyone submits a reference. That can be someone you work with, someone you have worked with in the past or you work with currently. Usually it's someone in a senior position to you. So it could be your line manager or a senior manager. It could be someone who's commissioned your work before. If you are an apprentice or a trainee, it might be the person who's convening the training. Someone who basically knows you and can speak to your experience. And what we ask is that you share the form with them, the reference form with them, and they fill out that reference form. So it's not you who fills out that reference form, it's them. But you need to share that form with them, and that needs to be submitted the same deadline as the regular application form. So I would advise, even if you're not submitting your application until later on, you can obviously start that process now, and you can reach out to someone who you've worked with or in the past, or you work with currently, and say, I'm looking at applying to this scheme. They ask for a reference. There's 1 or 2 questions they ask just about me. Would you mind filling this out for me? And just make sure they obviously do it before the deadline. We do chase people, but we don't give you that much longer. And obviously the deadline is the 9th of June. So my top tip would be to make sure you fill that out now.
Can I just say, to butt in, Howard, I would put it even more strongly than you have, which is basically there's nothing worse than having to chase references. It's enormously stressful. The person you ask at the last minute is on holiday. They've got unexpected leave booked. You can't find them. You're in a panic. Does this mean your application is not going to go through? Approach them early. Think about them really early about who you want. Ask them. And reflect on, are they the right person to do it? Is there someone else who's the right person? Please, this is the key bit of it. Don't leave it to the last minute, because it just puts you and us under pressure that we could easily avoid.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just to say on the reference form, before we go into the main application form, to show you the questions that we do ask. We just ask for their name, their contact details, their job title, their relationship with you as the applicant. And then the 2 questions we ask are, what qualities does the applicant have and what makes them stand out? And how do you see this applicant benefiting from the mentoring scheme? So that should take them really sort of 10 to 15 minutes to fill out. But yeah, as David mentioned, try and get them to do that as early as possible, because our experience has been sometimes there is delays because of holiday or sickness or other things. So definitely start thinking about that now. I'm just going to walk you through really quickly the application form itself. You can find, by the way, the application form on our website under Early Career Journalist Mentoring, which is under our activities, or in fact, you can just go on our homepage and click here, and that will take you right to that page. And this has all of the information you should need to know. We've even added some FAQs based on some of the questions we've had in. So have a read of those. But you can find the application form on here via this section. Okay, I'm interested, what now? And then number 1, you can apply via this form. You just click, and that takes you through to a Google form. And I'm just going to fill this out really quickly, just to really give you guidance on any questions. If at any point there are things that come up in your mind, or I'm not covering anything clearly, just write it down in the chat. I can't see the chat now, but I will come to it. So just to check on age. We ask if you're currently a journalist in the UK or Ireland, employed or freelance, if you're an apprentice, or if you are on a non-graduate journalism training scheme. So those are the three categories of people that would be eligible. And then this is just a question about if you are an apprentice, you must have completed 6 months. If you're not, it's obviously 2 to 5 years, as discussed earlier. Okay, so just some basic information. I'm just going to put one word because I know it'll block me from moving on otherwise. Which part of the UK or Ireland you're currently working in? Email address. We do ask you to include the inbox that you check most regularly. I would probably slightly update that now, David, to be your personal inbox, because what happens sometimes is people move on in terms of work and they'll give us their old work email address. So try and give us your personal email address there, and obviously make sure you're checking it. No worries if you don't have a Twitter account. It's helpful though if you do have a LinkedIn account for us to be able to see that, just in terms of to see a more detailed version of your CV. Current employer. If you are freelance and you don't have a sort of permanent employer, just write your most recent. So you might have written a piece for the New Statesman. That's what you would write in that scenario. Current role. So that's, say it's freelance journalist. Just put your exact position in the company and your time in that company as well. Do the time, don't try and kind of reverse engineer this, do it from the time that you're writing your application. So, just calculate it that, don't try and do it up to January 2025. And then previous relevant employment history. This helps us just confirm that you are eligible. So, we mentioned the 2 years. Ideally, you'd give us at least 2 years of what your experience was here, so you can show us that you do have that. We are open to non-graduates, so we don't insist or expect that you have a degree in journalism or a degree in anything else. We have plenty of people who didn't go to university on the scheme, but this is just obviously a question to ask if you do, to include that here. And some of the questions on the form are for us to evidence social mobility, because we obviously have to look at the diversity of applications. So you'll see some of the questions, for example, what your most recent school or college was, would be able to help us analyze that. But that's all anonymized when we do that testing, so we won't be judging you based on what school you went to, for example. And then we get to these two chunky questions, which I referred to earlier. So normally what people would do is they would already have written these and they will then paste them in here so you don't lose. Because often what can happen with these forms is you lose the document, or something crashes and then you have to redo it all over again. What I would advise is for these questions in particular, which are on our website, just prepare them beforehand. And then we get to the bit which we talk about your potential mentor. So tick up to 3 options in terms of the area of journalism that most interests you. This might not be the area of journalism you're in at the moment. It doesn't have to be. It can just be, what it says. So if you're interested in print, digital sports, broadcasting sports, and commissioning and assigning those. We haven't made an exhaustive list there, so if there are ones missing, just type them out there. We love for you to be as specific as possible, and as it helps us later on. So don't be afraid of not giving any of those answers and giving your own. This question is to capture really anything you have that's happened in terms of your life, or any struggles or any particular life experiences that you think it would be relevant for us to know when we're matching you with your mentor? Just to give a real tangible example of answers we've had in the past, it might be that we had a early career journalist who was half blind, so had issues with visibility. And they told us that in their application form, and they explicitly said, I would love to be able to put in touch with someone who has a similar disability, has worked in journalism, because there are some unique challenges that obviously they can give me advice on. We can't always guarantee that we'll be able to find you the exact person you're looking for. Obviously, we're limited by who's available, but we will do our best. So just in this section, just write anything that you want us to consider when we are choosing your mentor. And then there's this question about where your mentor is based. The default thing is we'll find them as close to you as possible. But if you are relaxed as to where they are and you are comfortable traveling to meet them, that's something that you would signal to us here. And that obviously expands the amount in terms of the mentor pool that are available for us to choose for you. This is a new question that we ask. I think we've only asked it last year, but we actually ask you to list any specific journalists that you look up to at the moment. We ask you to review our senior fellows page, which you can find on the website. And that's not necessarily because if you say, I really like Louis Theroux, which he comes up quite a lot in this answer, doesn't mean we're then going to match you with Louis Theroux. I mean, we'll try, but it doesn't. It just kind of gives us another data point for us to understand who you're looking for and what type of journalist you think it would be good in terms of being matched with. I think we're coming almost to an end on this form now. Some kind of questions about your background. I won't go through these because they are self-explanatory. Ethnicity, age, disability, any reasonable adjustment, that's obviously important to include. Gender. Obviously, there's prefer not to say in all of these, so if you don't want to share, that's absolutely fine. You won't be marked down, or we won't look at your application any differently. And then finally, it's just the data confirmation. So confirmation that you've read everything and that everything is accurate, and then you can submit. So yeah, it's not a short application form, but it's definitely worthwhile you filling that out, considering what the potential outcome of that could be, which is you could have a mentor for a year, be part of a big network and a program which could help develop you and your career. I think that is everything in terms of eligibility and application form. Now, if there's any questions, I'm happy to, myself and David can potentially answer those. Well, I think you're on mute, David.
Thank you, Howard. It would be useful if I did that. Didn't do that. So a few have come in while you were chatting. Key question: what's the application and selection timeline? So we'll come to the selection process in just a minute with Kate. Your application needs to be with us by the 9th of June.
Yeah.
12 midnight. Howard and I will be sitting there biting our fingernails. Please don't get the applications in 5 seconds before. Do any of the mentors work in social video journalism? We have a large pool of mentors who work in all sorts of different areas of journalism. And if we take on you for mentoring and we don't have anybody in the mentor pool, then we'll go out and find someone who is the right match for you. Does working as a researcher for a local publication count as experience, or do we need to work in broadcast? Applications are open to print, broadcast, multimedia, digital journalists, so you're certainly not disqualified working in a local paper. When you ask for the most recent school, college, do you want a secondary school, sixth form, college, or would you put university? So I think we would be wanting to hear your school or college or university.
Yeah. Yeah, for that one, it's not university. It would be your most recent sort of FE up to FE. So if the last time you were in education was in secondary school, for example, obviously write that there, or sixth form college. That's what that pertains to.
Brilliant. Thank you, Howard. That was very clear. So your application has reached us. Howard and I go through and read every one, and then we pass to our selectors, who are very experienced journalists working in different areas, and they go through the application process. And the woman who is in charge of the whole selection matching process is Kate. And Kate, do you want to say a little bit about what happens next?
Yes, hi everybody. So this will be the first year that I'm actually helping in this part of the process. I have been a mentor for the Schofield Trust for many years now, but I got to observe it in action this time last year, and I think there are some key things to remember. But the kind of the filtering process is quite a straightforward one. I think the form that you will have filled in is entirely aimed at helping give people the best possible information to be able to make judgments about your career, your potential, and how we might be able to help you. So remember, that's your way into it. And the filtering process is really just a case of groups of people coming together. I did it with a partner, and we went through a group of entrants. We reviewed each of the forms, and at the same time, lots of other groups of people were doing the same thing. And you're kind of given measurement. It's kind of like, how well do they score for? And the key word that came up time and time again was potential. But we're looking for ways to help you. So really, we're kind of going through that form and passing it for where is the potential, where are the areas that this person's identified that they need help, where does it seem like we think we might be able to help them, and also who do they sort of fit into. Don't underestimate the importance of the who do you look up to part of that form. There are fashions for it. Louis Theroux has mentioned, I think last year, Emily Maitlis was kind of probably #1 with a bullet. But it helps tell us if there's a journalist, even if their work for a small local newspaper might not have national recognition, but the reason why you think that they're great will tell us a lot about you. So it's not about necessarily status in the industry, it's about what they do and why they do it. So everything can help tell a story, and we're all storytellers in here. So basically there's that process of filtering. Once that's happened, we all come out with recommendations. Can we help this person? And how can we help this person? Who do we think we can do that? And there are always more applications than spaces available, even though the scale of the charity's work has expanded massively recently. I mean, you talked about 200 people being helped, but there are many more applications. So each of us were given a kind of give us 5 out of the group that you've looked at. So we were cutting down by 50%, sometimes more, to get to that number, and then they're then put into a pot. So that's the first kind of level of filtration. And then those applications are all taken away from us and then again reviewed, just making sure that there are people who can be matched with those individuals. The other thing that I would really recommend is be honest in your application. If you are trying to bend the kind of the rules of eligibility to get through, it will probably be picked up on. There are people looking at these entries in quite a lot of detail. So don't try and bend. If you're not ready yet, wait a year and do it. If you're worried you're at the end, don't try and pretend that you're not. Just kind of get in and explain why you think you're still on that edge of eligibility. Being honest will go a long way. Again, we're journalists, we're all about accuracy. That's something that will come through in your reporting of yourself. That's a really important one. And I'll go back to the point that I made at the start about potential. What a lot of the people within this group are mentors or former mentors. We're all thinking about our own personal experiences with previous mentors and how we've been able to help people, whether some people were more receptive to help than others. It's amazing. Some people will apply for the course and possibly not get as much out of it as you would hope. Others are ones who will kind of soak up everything and take it on. So we're looking for reasons to help you. So the more that you can tell us about yourself, and in this case, being different, being outside that kind of the sort of the journalistic norm that we sort of suffered from in past years, that's an absolute superpower for you. That is something that we're looking for because it helps us understand how we can build a framework of support around you and who are the individuals who can help do that. So those are the kind of the key parts of it. As I say, once you're sort of through that point, once you've kind of sort of won through, then it's really about a matching process and finding the best possible people to help you. And that might not always be the obvious one for you, but hopefully I think with the experience of the organisation and the people who are making the selections, they can see how you being matched to this individual might actually be really helpful. And we're encouraged when we're doing that filter process to sort of recommend people that we know in the industry who might be useful to help for certain individuals. So if you see someone and think, oh, I think they could be a really good match, then that's part of it as well. So again, you're just really giving us the kind of the information that we need to kind of give you the best kind of support that we can.
That's great, Kate. Thank you very much. And sometimes people ask us about timelines. Last year, we invited people to apply to us in September, not in May, June. The reason we've moved the timeline, pulled it forward, is we got so many applications last year. Applications shot up last year, went up by 46%. And it really put this small charity under a lot of pressure to try and get people selected and matched. So we've given ourselves more time. We've pulled the application forward. So you're probably going to ask us, so when will we hear? When will we hear? When will we find out who our mentor is? And the answer is, I don't know. But we know that we are going to try and do the selection and start the matching at the beginning of July. Journalists, like everybody else, go on holiday in August. So it may be that the messages we're sending to the journalists who want to match are just going to get an out of office saying, sorry, I'm in Tuscany, or sorry, I'm away in way up the Highlands somewhere. And so this is a new timeline for us, but we will keep you informed with the information as we have it, and we will make sure that you are up to date with all the information that we have. And if you are selected and get through, we will find you the best mentor that we can. Now,
just to add to that, David, as well,
yeah.
you'll get plenty of sort of advance notice before January, certainly, because obviously that's when the mentoring will start. We may even come back to you once we've confirmed that you've been successful in your application. We may even come back to you and ask you some more questions about your potential mentor. So there'll be some communication definitely some communication before the January start, but I think we'd be hoping for around September sort of time, I think, initially at least.
Hostage to fortune, don't give a date. Yes, we'll absolutely do our best. But no, Howard's quite right. The line will not go quiet until January the 1st next year. You will absolutely know. I really hope that's been useful. Are there any more questions? Okay, if you're like me and you come out of these things thinking, I never asked that question, email us. It's info@johnsschofieldtrust.org.uk. But please look at the FAQs on the website, because it may be that the question you're going to ask is actually been answered there. You have until the 9th of June to apply. Please give yourself enough time to get through the form. Please ask if anything is unclear, and very best of luck to you. And I really hope that this webinar has helped give you some information to supercharge your application. I really hope to see as many of you as possible on the other side. Okay, thanks very much to Kate and Howard. Thanks for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kate.